All right, welcome back to my page. We're discussing just random things and my things that I think about when I'm smoking cigars. Like I said before, this will be volume 3 of my Cigar Chronicles. Today I'm smoking H. Upman, the banker. Kind of excited about this. I've seen this, advertising things in cigar catalogs and online stuff. Hadn't got one, but actually I got one this month in my cigar.com subscription box. So I'm pretty pumped about it. So I'm gonna get it lit and start in on it. But today is actually my wedding anniversary. 23 years that I've been married to my wife, Holly. We have been together through a lot, as most people have. But we got married pretty quick after we met. I'm going to tell that story today about how we met and just some lessons that I've learned, that we've learned together, just about marriage, and for me about being a husband and what that means, and being a good husband. So I'm pretty excited about talking about that today. We got back in town. We went away for the weekend, just for overnight, just the two of us, just to get away, and had a good dinner together, and just spent time, just quality time. So that's kind of one of the lessons that I've learned, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. But just, married folks out there, just make time for each other. That sometimes it's hard, as busy as we get, and with kids and with jobs and with everything else that's going on. It's important to be intentional, just to want to spend time together. So anyway, I'm going to get this lit, and then I'm going to get in on this. So I think it lives up to the hype. Got some coffee today. It's a cool afternoon. Sometimes to me that's my favorite time to sit out and have a cigar, though. It's kind of quiet today around, so it's a good day to just sit and think. I met my wife on March 30th, actually, of 2001, at a college retreat that I was speaking at and she was singing at. I was at a place down south of Harrisburg, Illinois, called Camp Oxford. Just a small little church camp down there, actually right down the road from where I grew up. I never went to church camp there, but used to go down there all the time and play basketball with my friends. But my now sister-in-law, Heather, my wife's sister, heard me speak. I was sharing my story, which I'll do on here at a later date, about my cancer and about all of that, at a big student council convention that she was at. She heard me speak, and we actually had a mutual friend, and she called and she said, "Hey, I heard this guy talk. Do you know him?" And we actually knew each other pretty well, and he called me and said, "Hey, one of my friends called, would love to have you come down and speak at their college retreat they're having it here in a few weeks." And so we got it all scheduled out, planned out. I talked to Heather on the phone, and when I got down there that night, it was an overnight thing, so I wasn't supposed to speak until about midnight. I took some friends of mine with me, and we went down there, and things were going on. I don't know, we got down there a couple hours early, but they had some things going on the stage, and I just said, "Hey, I want to find out, make sure we're in the right spot." So there was a guy sitting in the back who just happened to be Heather's husband, Matt, who's my brother-in-law, and I told him I was looking for Heather and I was there to speak, and he said, "Well, that's my wife. I'll go tell her that you're here." So she came back to the back where I was, and I'd actually kind of went back out in the little lobby area, foyer area. It was a little quieter to just kind of sit and pray and think and get my notes together and all that. And Heather came back and she introduced herself, and told me that her sister was the one in charge of the night and what was going to happen, and the plan and all that. So she said, I'll go get her. I'll send her back here and she can tell you what's going on. So she did that, and turns out whenever this girl walked in where I was sitting, I was a little dumbfounded. I didn't realize that when she said she was going to send her sister back, that her sister was one of the hottest girls I'd ever seen. So I was a little bit, I don't know, just kind of dumbstruck that night. Then she kind of explained to me what the plan was in terms of how she wanted the service to go with the music and then me speaking and then the music afterwards and all that. And I was really not focused on any of that at that point. So I messed it all up. It was kind of a train wreck. I dropped my notes on the floor, and I didn't really conclude it how I was supposed to conclude it. It just completely messed it up, and I'm sure she thought that I was the biggest idiot on the planet. But I'd never really been bothered so much by a girl like that. Like, I dated a lot of girls. I was 20, probably 23 years old at the time, and that never really happened. Like, I just couldn't figure it out. But whatever it was, whenever it was over, we ended up talking. We kind of met. I don't want to say by chance, because I don't believe that, but we ended up talking kind of in the middle of the sanctuary that night, that little chapel there at the camp, and we talked for about 30 minutes, and she invited me and my buddies to come back the next night for their closing service. And so I decided that I was going right then. I wanted to go back and talk to her some more, but it was late. It was probably 3 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, something like that, when we got back to town. And the only place that was open was Hardee's in Harrisburg, and nothing better for you than Hardee's at 3:30 in the morning. So we sat there and talked, and told the guys I was going back, and I wanted them to go if they wanted to go with me. But I asked them too. I said, do you think it'd be wrong for me to ask this girl for her number at this church service? And one of my friends told me that if you don't ask her for her number, you're the stupidest man alive. I would have been at that point. So I went back. They didn't all go back with me. I think one or two of them did. But what I remember about that night was, at the end of the service, the speaker was up talking, and they asked about other events, things that were going on in local churches and in the next few weeks or whatever. And I was actually preaching at a revival at my church, me and another guy, in a week or two after that. And so I announced that, and after all that was said and done, I kind of went up to the front. Holly was up there, and she was putting her music away, because that was what she was doing. She was singing when she was like, before I was speaking. Part of my just dumbfoundedness was her heart, listening to her sing and watching her worship. Like, she wasn't putting on a show. I could just truly see, like, her heart for the Lord, and that she meant it, And so not only was she just physically beautiful to me, that I just saw her spirit, and just, I'd never seen anything like that. I'd never met any girl like her. So when I went up front to talk to her, my intention was to ask her for her phone number, and tell her that I'd like to take her out sometime, and and all that. And when I got up there, though, she handed me a piece of paper, and she said, "Here's my number. I want to come hear you preach." So I was like, all right. So she says that she does that because she knew I was nervous, and she wanted to take the pressure off of me. So whatever, I don't care why it happened. And so anyway, went home that night. It was a Saturday night, and I waited a couple days, and I think it was a Tuesday. I called her for the first time and said, "Hey, it's Brad, just wanted to call and say hi and talk to you." And I said, "How's it going?" And she said, "Well, can I be honest with you?" And I thought, oh, man, she got a boyfriend. Like, that was my first thought. Was, I knew this was too good to be true. This girl, like, as pretty as she is, as sweet as she is, as, all these things that she is, surely she's not available. That was, I thought, was coming, but that's not what she said. It turned out that that day after they came home, her younger brother and her older sister were of course there at the retreat, and their parents set them down after church that day, and told them they were separating after 28 years of marriage. And that was just a gut punch to them. And they couldn't believe it. They didn't understand why, and all that. Nobody really could, apparently. And so when I asked her how she was doing, she said, "Can I be honest?" And we talked about that. And I shared in my last video about my parents' situation and how they divorced when I was about 6, and so I grew up that way, only knowing that. And her childhood, her upbringing was the complete opposite of mine. I mean, they had kind of the perfect family, so to speak, and it was really a shock to them and to everybody else. But we ended up talking again. We talked for a couple hours that night. I called her back a couple days later, and then she came up a couple times for that revival. And one night she came up, I wasn't preaching, the other guy was, and she just hung out with me in the youth group afterwards, and kids loved her. The second time she came back was a Sunday night, and it was the last night of the revival. Afterwards, we went to Dairy Queen with some of our youth group kids and just sat and hung out, and they loved her, and we talked, and then we went back to the church, and we sat out on a playground for about 3 hours talking. And at the end of that night, I knew this was the girl I was going to marry. Like I had no doubt in my mind that she was the one. She had some reservations about me, but she had been in some pretty rough relationships over the past several years of her life, and so she was very guarded, very cautious with that. Which I totally understand. But that was the night I knew, and I told my mom shortly after that I knew that I was going to marry her. She was a first-year teacher at a school, and this was like early April when all this kind of happened, and I was a youth pastor. And when school got out, though, we'd spent a lot of time together. We started spending time together. We went out on some dates and just hung out and just getting to know each other kind of thing, and it was great. It was great. I don't know what else to say about it, but the bad part came when school got out. She had already signed up to go to Russia for 2 months on a mission trip. And I was planning to go to Africa later on that summer for about 2.5 weeks. So she went on her trip and I went on mine. We had about 10 days in between those trips where we were together. And we didn't talk much. This was way before cell phones and, instant messenger and what, I don't even know. Whatever was, you had, your phone at your house that you could use. And I had to buy a Walmart calling card, long distance calling card to talk to her. And I could only afford about one 60-minute card a week. And I could only call Russia for 6 minutes on it. So we had to schedule it out where I knew she'd be in her hotel room and I would call her and we'd talk for about 6 minutes a week. But we had talked about if we could make it through the summer, we still had the same feelings for each other that it was probably meant to be. So she got back from Russia. 10 days later, I went to Africa for 2.5 weeks. And when I got back from Africa, I bought a ring. First thing I did, one of the first things I did actually was buy a ring for her. And not too long after that, maybe a week or so after that, I asked her dad, if I had his permission to ask Holly to marry me, and he gave me his permission, gave me his blessing on that. And so I asked her, I surprised her one morning early, got to her house really early, had stopped and got some McDonald's breakfast. And I don't even think she liked McDonald's breakfast, but I really didn't know how else to surprise her. But I just put the ring in the bag. And so I woke her up, surprised her. She just thought I was being nice. She had no clue. And so when she opened the bag, finally, she saw the box in there and she kind of looked back at me and she's like, nah. So I got down on a knee and she pulled the ring out of the box and I put it on her finger and I asked her if she'd marry me and make me the happiest man in the world. So she said yes, and we didn't want a long engagement. And so that was August 16th, actually, of 2001. So that was about 6 months after we met, minus the, 2.5, 3 months or so that we didn't get to see each other. But that was 23 years ago today, though, that we got married. We scheduled it for February 9th, kind of the way her school schedule worked out and all that. We took our vows and said, I do, and we've had quite a life together. I'm gonna have to puff a little more on this thing. It's going out, but We had Preston, our oldest, who's now 21. We had him about a year and a half after we got married. And then about 2 years after that, we had Lydia, our 19-year-old. And then back in 2018, we adopted our youngest, Silas, from Haiti, which is another story too, of course. But we've dealt with all kinds of issues in our 23 years. Good issues, bad issues. I mean, we've been through it. And so, I'm a cancer survivor and an amputee, which of course is another story too, but had bone cancer when I was in high school, lost my leg back in 2012. Holly didn't know me through all the cancer stuff, but she's been with me through lots of difficulties I've had early on with the leg, and then with the amputation and all the physical stuff that we've had to go through. She's had some herself, just some physical stuff, some stuff that she's had to deal with. And in all of mine, she's been right there beside me. Like, I mean, it was never an issue of whether she was going to stay with this one-legged guy, that needed help, that couldn't do much for himself and all that at first. But we worked together for years with teenagers and in local churches and things like that. We've dealt with family struggles. We've dealt with financial problems. We've dealt with personal problems. We've had all of our share of both sides of the coin. We've had some great times, and the great outweighs the bad by far. We've been through some pretty extremely difficult situations that have kind of challenged our marriage at times even. But one thing that we talked about before we got married was that we would never really consider divorce. Like, that was never an option. Like, that nobody was going to throw out that word as kind of a threat or anything like that, because I promised, I made a promise to her that I would love her like Christ loved the church. Like, that's biblical. That's what a husband is supposed to do, to love his wife like Christ loved the church. And we know what Christ did for the church, right? He died for her. Tried to do that to the best of my ability. I pray for the strength to do that every day. Protect her and provide for her is what the Bible says that we should do for our wives. She's my bride. I couldn't have asked for a better one. We complement each other. We complement each other well. I have a lot of weaknesses that she's strong in, and vice versa. And so that's one thing that we have learned in all this. One thing that I've learned. So when we talk about lessons you can learn in marriage is to communicate. And I know that sounds like kind of cliched, but it is. It's the truth. It's the absolute truth that if you ever stop communicating, then you're setting yourself up for some bad things. Being honest, and the other thing is to always make time for each other. This life gets extremely busy. We get busy. I'm coaching. She's works as an accountant, so she's getting ready to start tax season. And it's going to be tough for the next few months. And so we have to be intentional with that. And we will do that. Anyway, but through all the ups and downs and trials and difficulties and, good and bad, another thing I've learned is that, our vows matter. We said for better or worse. We said for richer or poorer. We said in sickness and health. We said as long as we shall both live. We made those vows to one another, but we made them to God as well. That we would do that for each other. And so I'm thankful today to sit here and think about my anniversary, to think about my wife, to think about how special she is to me, how much I love her. Thankful, that I get to come home to her every day, and I get to wake up beside her every day, that I get to love her, that I see that as a blessing, and a gift. And I hope all of you husbands out there see your wife like that. I hope you see your wife as a gift, someone that you get to love, So I want to wish my wife a happy anniversary. So Holly, happy 23 years, and here's to as many more as the Lord will give us. So I want to thank you all for watching. I'm going to sit here and finish this. Hope you guys have a great day. And if you don't care to give this video a like and subscribe to the page, I'd appreciate it. But until then, we'll see you soon. Bye.